The envelope sat on Isaac Emerson's mahogany desk for 3 days before he opened it. Not because he was afraid of bad news, but because legal correspondence from small-town attorneys in Washington rarely meant anything good for a man who ran a pharmaceutical empire worth $800 million. When he finally sliced through the paper with his letter opener on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the words hit him harder than any hostile takeover attempt ever had. Paternity claim. 3-year-old child. Mother's name. Deanna Pierce. His hand went numb. The letter dropped to the polished surface of his desk as his heart hammered against his ribs. Deanna. After 4 years of trying to forget her, of burying himself in work and expansion deals and charity galas with women whose faces blurred together, her name still had the power to knock the air from his lungs. Isaac stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward and hitting the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle. Rain streaked the glass in rivulets that matched the chaos in his mind. A child. A 3-year-old child. He did the math quickly, his business-trained brain calculating dates even as his emotions rioted. 4 years since that last weekend they'd spent together before everything fell apart. 4 years since he'd watched her walk away from him at the airport, tears streaming down her face as she chose her family's failing business over their future together. He'd been angry then, hurt and proud and stupid. He'd let her go without fighting, convinced that if she really loved him, she would have stayed. Now, staring at the letter that claimed he had a daughter, all that old anger felt hollow and pointless. His assistant knocked and entered without waiting for a response, something Janet only did when she sensed an emergency. She'd worked for him for 6 years and could read his moods better than anyone. "Cancel everything," Isaac said, his voice rough. "For the next week, maybe 2. Janet's eyebrows rose. "Everything? You have the FDA meeting on Tuesday and the board presentation on Thursday. Marcus can handle the FDA. Move the board meeting." He grabbed his phone and his jacket from the back of his chair. "I need to go to Washington, the eastern part near Spokane." "Isaac, what's wrong?" He looked at her, this woman who'd seen him through his father's death and the company's near bankruptcy 3 years ago, who'd brought him coffee at 2 in the morning during crisis after crisis. "I might have a daughter, and I need to find out if it's true." The drive to Millbrook, Washington took 4.5 hours, and Isaac made it in 4, his Mercedes eating up the interstate as his mind raced faster than the engine. He tried calling Diana's old number, but it was disconnected. He'd resisted the urge to hire a private investigator, something that felt invasive and wrong given their history. Instead, he'd called the attorney listed on the letter, a man named Robert Hughes who'd been professionally polite and utterly unhelpful. "Miss Pierce will need to speak with you directly," Hughes had said. "I'm simply facilitating the legal notification process." "Is the child mine?" Isaac had demanded, needing to hear it. "That's a conversation for you and Miss Pierce." The small town appeared on the horizon as the sun broke through the clouds, casting everything in gold. It was the kind of place Isaac had left behind long ago, where everyone knew everyone and secrets were currency. Deanna had grown up here, had talked about it sometimes when they were together, though always with a mixture of affection and frustration. Her family's pharmacy had been here, the one her grandfather had started in the 50s. The one that had been failing when they'd been together, drowning in debt and poor management. The reason she'd left him, choosing duty over love, he found the address easily enough. A small house on Maple Street with a blue door and a garden full of late summer flowers. A plastic slide sat in the backyard, visible from the street, and Isaac's stomach clenched at the sight of it. Evidence of a child. His child, maybe. He sat in the car for 5 full minutes, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he tried to compose himself. Isaac Emerson didn't get nervous. He'd presented to hostile boards, negotiated with cutthroat competitors, testified before Congress about drug pricing. But the thought of knocking on that blue door terrified him in ways nothing else ever had. Finally, he forced himself out of the car and up the walkway. The doorbell chimed inside and he heard footsteps. Light, quick footsteps that made his pulse race. When the door opened, time stopped. Deanna stood there in jeans and an old college sweatshirt, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, and she was even more beautiful than he remembered. 4 years had added tiny lines around her eyes, but had only enhanced the striking features he'd once traced with his fingers in the dark. Her green eyes widened in shock, and her hand flew to her throat. "Isaac," she breathed. "Hello, Deanna." His voice came out steadier than he felt. "I got a letter from your attorney." She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, they were bright with unshed tears. "I told him to give you more notice. I told him to send it certified mail so you'd have time to process before you showed up here. I've had 3 days to process. Now I need answers." He kept his voice gentle despite the storm of emotions inside him. "Do I have a daughter?" Diana's lips trembled. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally nodded. "Yes, her name is Emma. She's 3.5 and she has your eyes." The world tilted sideways. Confirmation was different from suspicion. Hearing Deanna say it made it real in a way the letter hadn't. "Why didn't you tell me? 4 years, Deanna. 4 years you kept this from me." "I tried," she said quickly, urgently. "I called you 2 months after I left. I called your office 6 times, and your assistant said you didn't want to speak to me. I sent emails that bounced back. I even came to Seattle once when I was 5 months pregnant, but security at your building wouldn't let me up, and I didn't have the energy to fight through your barriers." Isaac's mind reeled. "Janet never told me you called. I don't know who Janet is. The woman I spoke to was named Catherine." Catherine. His old assistant who'd been let go for embezzlement 2 months after Deanna had left, who'd apparently been screening his calls without authorization. "Jesus," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't know, I swear to you I didn't know." "I believe you," Deanna said softly. "I figured out eventually that your assistant was blocking me. By then, I was 7 months pregnant and exhausted and angry. I told myself you'd made your choice, that you'd rather nurse your wounded pride than give me a chance to explain. I stopped trying. But why now? Why send a lawyer's letter after all this time?" Deanna glanced behind her into the house, then stepped outside, pulling the door mostly closed. "Because Emma's been asking about her father. Because she deserves to know you, even if I was too stubborn and hurt to try again for the past 3 years. And because legally, you have rights, and I want to do this properly. I don't want lawyers and courts and ugly battles. I want us to figure this out like adults." "I want to meet her," Isaac said immediately. "Now, today, she's at preschool until 3. "Isaac, you can't just burst into her life. She doesn't know about you yet. I need to prepare her to explain." He wanted to argue, to demand his rights as a father, but the plea in Diana's eyes stopped him. She was right. This wasn't about his feelings or his need for answers. This was about a little girl who'd never met him. "Okay," he said, though it cost him. "Tell me when and where, and I'll be there." "But Deanna, I'm not walking away. I've already missed 3.5 years. I won't miss another day. I'm not asking you to walk away. I'm asking you to let me do this right." She bit her lip, a gesture he remembered from late-night conversations and lazy Sunday mornings. "Can you come back at 4? I'll pick her up early from preschool and talk to her. You can meet her then." 4 hours felt like an eternity, but he nodded. 4 o'clock. He turned to leave, then stopped. "Deanna, why didn't you sue for child support?" Why wait until now for any kind of legal contact? She met his eyes, and the pain in them was raw and honest. Because I still have my pride too. Because I told myself I could do it alone, that I didn't need anything from the man who wouldn't take my calls. But that was selfish and wrong, and I realized it too late. Emma deserves a father, even if her parents are too wounded to figure out how to be in the same room. Isaac drove to the only coffee shop in town and sat nursing a black coffee he couldn't taste, watching the clock on the wall tick forward with agonizing slowness. His phone buzzed with messages from the office, from Marcus asking about the FDA meeting, from board members wanting updates, but he ignored all of it. He had a daughter. A little girl named Emma who had his eyes. The reality of it hit him in waves, stealing his breath. He'd never thought much about children, had been too focused on building the company his father had left him, on transforming Emerson Pharmaceuticals from a struggling generic manufacturer into a pharmaceutical powerhouse with revolutionary patents. But now, knowing she existed, he couldn't imagine his life without her in it. At 3:30, he paid for his untouched coffee and drove back to the blue house on Maple Street. He parked a block away and walked, needing the movement to settle his nerves. A minivan pulled into Deanna's driveway just as he reached the walkway, and his heart stopped. Deanna got out of the driver's side, then opened the rear door. A small figure emerged, all dark curls and bright pink sneakers, clutching a backpack covered in butterflies. She was chattering about something, her high voice carrying in the quiet street, and Diana laughed at whatever she said. Then Diana looked up and saw him. She said something to the little girl who turned. Isaac forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful. Tiny and perfect with Diana's dark hair and delicate features, but her eyes, even from this distance, were the same unusual gray-blue as his own. She watched him with curious attention as he walked closer, her small hand tucked into her mother's. "Emma, sweetheart," Deanna said gently, crouching down to her daughter's level. "Remember how we talked today about someone special I wanted you to meet?" Emma nodded, her eyes still on Isaac. "This is Isaac. He's your daddy." The word hit Isaac like a physical blow. Daddy. He was someone's daddy. This perfect little person was his daughter. Emma studied him with serious eyes, then asked, "Why haven't you visited before?" God, the directness of children. Isaac crouched down too, putting himself at her level even though his knees protested. "Because I didn't know about you, sweetheart. If I had known, I would have been here every single day. Mommy says you live far away. I do, in Seattle, but I'm here now, and I'd really like to get to know you if that's okay with you." Emma considered this, her little face scrunched in thought. Then she held up a drawing she'd been carrying. "I made a picture at school today. It's a dragon." Isaac took the offered paper carefully, studying the wild scribbles of crayon that might have been a dragon or might have been anything else. "This is amazing. I love the colors you used." "Purple is my favorite," Emma announced, "and also pink, sometimes yellow. Those are excellent choices." Isaac looked up at Deanna, who was watching them with tears streaming down her face. "I like green, personally. Like Mommy's eyes," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Do you like Mommy?" The question hung in the air between them. Isaac held Deanna's gaze, seeing the woman he'd loved, the woman he'd never stopped loving if he was honest with himself, and said quietly, "Yes, very much." Diana looked away, wiping at her cheeks. "Emma, why don't you show Isaac your room?" "I'll make some snacks." The house was small but warm, filled with photographs and Emma's artwork and the comfortable clutter of real life. Emma's room was an explosion of color, with a toddler bed shaped like a race car and shelves overflowing with books and toys. She showed Isaac everything with the proud enthusiasm of a 3-year-old, and he listened to every word, committing it all to memory. "This is Bunny," Emma said, holding up a worn stuffed rabbit. "She sleeps with me every night, and this is Mr. Bear. He used to be Mommy's when she was little." Isaac recognized the bear. He'd seen it once in a photograph Diana had shown him, back when they'd been together and sharing their histories. The fact that Diana had given it to their daughter made his chest tight. They spent an hour together, the three of them, eating apple slices and cheese crackers at the kitchen table while Emma chattered about preschool and her best friend Sophie, and the cat she wanted but couldn't have, because they rented the house. Diana was quieter, watching him with Emma with an expression he couldn't quite read. When Emma started to yawn, Diana announced it was quiet time. Emma hugged Isaac with unself-conscious affection that made him want to cry, then scampered off to her room with Bunny tucked under one arm. Alone with Diana in the kitchen, the air felt charged with everything unspoken between them. Isaac helped her clean up the snack dishes, the domesticity of it achingly familiar despite the years apart. "She's incredible," he said finally. "Diana, she's perfect. She is." Diana leaned against the counter, her arms wrapped around herself. "I'm sorry. For not trying harder to reach you, for giving up. You've missed so much, and that's partly my fault. We both made mistakes." Isaac set down the dish towel and moved closer, drawn to her like he'd always been. "But I meant what I said before. I'm not walking away. I want to be part of her life. Part of both your lives. I know you live in Seattle. I know you have a company to run. We can work out a custody arrangement, visitation schedules." "I'm not talking about visitation schedules, Diana. I'm talking about being here. Really here." She looked up at him, confusion and hope warring in her eyes. "What does that mean?" "It means I can work remotely. It means the company has a whole executive team for a reason. It means I've spent 4 years throwing myself into work because I didn't want to feel what I felt when you left. And now, I have a reason to stop running." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly familiar. "It means I never stopped loving you, and finding out about Emma doesn't change that. If anything, it makes it clearer." Isaac. His name was a whisper, a prayer. "You can't just upend your life. Watch me." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away new tears. "I lost you once because I was too proud to fight for us. I'm not making that mistake again. I want to know my daughter. And I want a chance to win back the woman I never should have let go. We can't just pick up where we left off. 4 years, Isaac. We're different people now." "Then let's get to know who we are now. Let me stay in town. Let me see Emma regularly. Let me take you to dinner and prove that what we had wasn't just in my imagination." His voice dropped, urgent and raw. "Please, Diana, give me a chance." She searched his face for a long moment, then finally nodded. "Okay, but slowly. For Emma's sake. She needs stability, not chaos." "Slowly," he agreed, though every cell in his body wanted to pull her into his arms and never let go. "I'll get a hotel room in town. Or rent a place if the hotel is terrible." "The hotel is terrible," Diana said with a watery laugh. "Mrs. Henderson runs it, and she hasn't updated anything since 1987. Rental it is, then." Over the next 2 weeks, Isaac's life transformed in ways he couldn't have imagined. He found a furnished apartment above the old hardware store downtown, a space with decent Wi-Fi and a view of Main Street. He set up a makeshift office and discovered that running a pharmaceutical company remotely was easier than he'd expected when you had good people in place. More importantly, he spent every possible moment with Emma. He picked her up from preschool, learning the names of her teachers and the other parents in the pickup line. He attended a daddy-daughter event at the library where they made crafts and read stories. He learned that Emma liked her sandwiches cut in triangles, not squares, and that she was afraid of the dark but brave about everything else. He fell completely. irrevocably in love with his daughter. And he fell deeper in love with Deanna, watching her mother their child with a patience and grace that amazed him. She'd built a life here, he learned. After leaving him, she'd come back to Millbrook and fought to save her family's pharmacy. It had been brutal, requiring loans and long hours and sacrifices he couldn't imagine. But she'd done it. Pierce Pharmacy was now thriving, a community hub that still did things the old-fashioned way, with personal service and home deliveries. "I couldn't let it die," Deanna told him one evening after Emma was in bed. They were sitting on her porch swing, the late summer air warm and full of cricket song. "It was all I had left of my grandfather, and this town needed it. The nearest chain pharmacy is 30 miles away. You saved it alone while pregnant." Isaac shook his head in wonder. "You're incredible. I had help. The community rallied around me, people I'd known my whole life." She looked at him, her expression soft in the porch light. "That's what I tried to explain 4 years ago. Why I couldn't just leave with you. This place, these people, they're part of who I am. I know. I was too focused on my own plans, my own vision of our future to hear what you were really saying." He reached over and took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I thought love meant you'd choose me over everything else. I didn't understand that real love means supporting someone's choices even when they're hard." "I thought love meant you'd wait for me," Deanna admitted. "That you'd understand I needed to do this first, and then we could figure out us. When you stopped taking my calls, I thought I'd been wrong about everything. Catherine stole 3 months from us, from Emma." Anger still burned when he thought about it. "If I'd known you were trying to reach me, I would have been on the first flight out. Pregnant or not, I would have been there. I believe you now. I didn't then. I thought you'd decided I wasn't worth the hassle." She squeezed his hand. "We both made assumptions instead of fighting to communicate. I don't want to make that mistake again." They sat in comfortable silence, the swing creaking gently. Then Deanna said, "Emma asked me today if you were going to stay." Isaac's heart clenched. "What did you tell her?" I said I didn't know. "That you had a big important job in the city." Deanna turned to face him. "Isaac, this has been wonderful these past 2 weeks. Getting to see you with Emma, watching you be the father I always hoped you'd be. But we need to talk about reality. You can't live in an apartment above a hardware store forever. Your company needs you. My company has me. I'm on video calls every day. I review reports, make decisions, guide strategy." He shifted to face her fully. "The truth is, I don't need to be in Seattle. I was there because that's where the headquarters is, where my father built everything. But the company is strong enough now to survive without me hovering over every detail. You'd really stay here, in Millbrook. I'd stay anywhere you and Emma are." He brought her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles. "Deanna, I meant what I said. I'm not walking away from either of you. I want to be Emma's father, not a visitor who shows up twice a month. And I want to be with you if you'll have me." "We barely know each other anymore," she protested, but her voice was weak. "Then let's fix that. Have dinner with me, tomorrow night. A real date, just the 2 of us. I can't just leave Emma with a babysitter to go on a date. Why not? She needs to see her mother happy. She needs to see us trying." He stroked his thumb across her wrist, feeling her pulse jump. "Besides, I already asked Mrs. Patterson down the street. She said she'd be delighted to watch Emma for a few hours." Deanna laughed, surprised. "You asked Barbara Patterson to babysit?" "I did. She told me she used to watch you when you were Emma's age and that it's about time I made an honest woman of you." He grinned at Diana's shocked expression. "Small town, remember? Everyone knows everything. Oh God, what else did she say? That I'd better not break your heart again or she'd break my kneecaps." His grin faded into something more serious. "I won't, Deanna, break your heart again, I swear it." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, tomorrow night, but somewhere casual. I don't have fancy date clothes anymore. You could wear a paper bag and you'd be the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." "Flatterer," she accused, but she was smiling. Their date the next evening was at an Italian restaurant one town over, far enough for privacy, but close enough that Deanna didn't feel too far from Emma. Isaac drove, and the car ride reminded him of old times, when they'd take weekend road trips and talk about everything and nothing. Over pasta and wine, they talked about the years apart. Isaac told her about building the company, about the stress and the victories and the loneliness he tried to ignore. Deanna talked about pregnancy and early motherhood, about the terror and joy of raising Emma alone, about slowly rebuilding her confidence and her life. "I was so angry at you," Deanna admitted, twirling her wine glass. "For months I was furious. You were supposed to be different. You were supposed to understand me, and then you just cut me off like I meant nothing. You meant everything. That's why it hurt so much when you left." Isaac reached across the table and took her hand. "I was young and stupid and prideful. I thought if I could just show you what you were missing, you'd regret choosing the pharmacy over me. Instead, I just lost 3 years with my daughter and 4 years with you. We can't get that time back. No, but we can make sure we don't waste any more time." He stood abruptly, then dropped to one knee beside the table. Diana's eyes went wide. "Isaac, what are you doing? Something I should have done 4 years ago instead of letting you walk away." He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, snapping it open to reveal a simple but stunning diamond ring. "Deanna Pierce, I love you. I've loved you since the day we met at that medical conference in Portland, when you argued with me about prescription pricing and made me see the human side of what I do. I loved you when you left, even though I was too hurt to admit it. I loved you every day we were apart, and I love you now even more. Marry me. Let me be the father Emma deserves and the partner you need. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'll never let pride or fear get between us again." The restaurant had gone quiet. Deanna's eyes were streaming tears, her hand pressed to her mouth. "Isaac, this is crazy. It's been 2 weeks. It's been 4 years. And I've known you were the one since the first night we stayed up until dawn talking about everything and nothing. I don't need more time to know what I want." He stayed on his knee, his heart pounding. "You don't have to answer now. Wear the ring, think about it, take all the time you need, but know that I'm sure, completely, absolutely sure." "Yes," Deanna whispered. "What?" "Yes," louder now, more confident. "Yes, I'll marry you. Because I never stopped loving you either. And these past 2 weeks have shown me that what we had wasn't just nostalgia or wishful thinking. You're good with Emma. You're patient and kind, and you actually listen. And when I look at you, I still feel the same flutter in my stomach I felt 4 years ago." Isaac slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands, then stood and pulled her into his arms, kissing her in front of the entire restaurant. Applause broke out around them, but he barely heard it over the pounding of his heart. When they finally broke apart, Deanna was laughing and crying at the same time. "We're insane. People don't do this. We're not people, we're us, and we've wasted enough time." He kissed her again, softer this time. "I want to tell Emma. Together." They drove back to Millbrook in a happy daze, talking about logistics and plans and the future. When they picked Emma up from Mrs. Patterson's, the older woman took one look at Diana's ring and burst into delighted laughter. "About time," she declared, waving off their thanks. "That child needs her parents together." At home, they woke Emma gently and sat with her on the couch. She was sleepy and confused until Deanna said, "Emma, sweetheart, Isaac and I have something to tell you. We're going to be a family. Isaac is going to live with us and we're going to get married." Emma's eyes went round. "Like a princess wedding." Something like that, Isaac said, pulling his daughter onto his lap. She came willingly, trustingly, and his heart expanded. What do you think about that? Will you read me stories every night? Emma asked seriously. Every single night, and play dragons, as many dragons as you want. Okay. She nodded decisively, then yawned. Can I be a flower girl? Sophie's cousin was a flower girl and she got to throw flowers everywhere. You can absolutely be a flower girl, Deanna promised, stroking Emma's hair. They put her back to bed together and Isaac read 3 stories before Emma finally drifted off. Standing in the doorway of her room watching her sleep, Isaac felt a peace he'd never known. This was what mattered. This little girl and the woman beside him. Everything else was details. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Isaac officially relocated to Millbrook, turning the apartment above the hardware store into a permanent office while they searched for a house together. He commuted to Seattle once a week for crucial meetings, but otherwise ran the company remotely, discovering that he was actually a better CEO when he wasn't drowning in day-to-day minutiae. He and Deanna moved into a larger house on the edge of town, a renovated farmhouse with land for Emma to play and a big kitchen where they cooked together. Emma adjusted beautifully, thriving with 2 parents and the stability they provided. Isaac attended every preschool event, every doctor's appointment, soaking up fatherhood like a man dying of thirst. He proposed to Deanna properly a second time, with Emma's help, in the garden of their new home. They planted a tree together, the 3 of them, and Isaac presented Deanna with a second ring, a wedding band to match the engagement ring. Emma, carefully coached, asked Deanna if she'd be their forever family. The wedding was small and perfect, held at the community center in Millbrook with everyone in town invited. Emma was indeed the flower girl, taking her job very seriously as she scattered rose petals down the aisle. When Isaac saw Deanna in her simple white dress, walking toward him with tears of joy in her eyes, he knew he'd finally found his way home. They said their vows in front of family and friends, promising to love and cherish, to communicate and support, to never let pride or fear keep them apart again. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Emma cheered louder than anyone, and the whole town laughed. The reception was a potluck affair, with dishes from every family in Millbrook. Isaac danced with his daughter, her tiny feet standing on his shoes as they swayed to music. He danced with his wife, holding her close and marveling at the journey that had brought them back together. "Happy?" Deanna asked, her arms around his neck. "Happier than I knew was possible," he answered honestly. "Even though you're living in a small town running your empire remotely. Even though you gave up the penthouse and the city life, I didn't give anything up. I traded empty success for real happiness, and I'd make that trade every single day." He kissed her softly. "You and Emma are my empire now. Everything else is just details." Life settled into a beautiful routine. Isaac discovered he loved small-town life, the way everyone knew each other and looked out for one another. He used his resources to help where he could, funding a new wing for the community center and sponsoring local sports teams. He became a regular at Pierce Pharmacy, often stopping by to have lunch with Deanna in her small office above the store. Emma started kindergarten, a milestone that made both her parents unexpectedly emotional. Isaac held Deanna as they watched their daughter skip into the school building, her backpack almost as big as she was. "She's growing up so fast," Deanna said. "We have time, so much time." Isaac kissed the top of her head, "And maybe we'll add to the family if you want." Deanna turned in his arms, her eyes bright. "Are you saying you want more children?" "I'm saying I want everything with you. If that includes more kids, then yes. Absolutely yes." They tried, and 6 months later Diana stood in their bathroom with a positive pregnancy test, tears streaming down her face. Isaac found her there and pulled her into his arms, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. "I get to be here for this one," he said wonderingly. "From the beginning. Every appointment, every milestone," Diana promised. They told Emma carefully, explaining that she was going to be a big sister. Her reaction was pure delight, immediately launching into plans for teaching the baby everything she knew. Isaac and Diana exchanged amused glances over her head, both thinking the same thing. They'd gotten so lucky. The pregnancy was easier than Diana's first, partly because she wasn't alone and terrified this time. Isaac went to every appointment, his hand in hers as they heard the heartbeat and saw the ultrasound images. When they found out they were having a boy, Emma declared they should name him Dragon, and it took considerable negotiation to settle on Daniel instead, with Dragon as a middle name compromise that they pretended to consider before settling on James. Daniel James Emerson was born on a snowy February morning, coming into the world with a piercing cry that announced his personality. Emma, now 5, was brought to the hospital to meet her brother and declared him wrinkly but acceptable. Isaac held his son and marveled at the fact that he'd almost missed all of this, almost lost his chance at this perfect, chaotic, beautiful family. "Thank you," he told Diana that night when it was just the two of them and Daniel sleeping in her arms, "for not giving up, for sending that letter, for giving me another chance." "Thank you for coming when you got it," Diana answered, "for staying, for choosing us. Always," he promised. "Every time I choose us." Life continued to unfold in wonderful, ordinary ways. Emerson Pharmaceuticals thrived under Isaac's remote leadership, actually becoming more innovative as he focused on the big picture rather than micromanaging. He mentored other executives through video calls and strategic retreats, building a company culture that valued family and balance as much as profit. Pierce Pharmacy expanded, adding a second location in a neighboring town. Diana hired additional staff and finally took a salary that reflected her hard work. She and Isaac became true partners, consulting each other on major decisions and supporting each other's dreams. Emma excelled in school, showing an early aptitude for science that made both her parents swell with pride. She adored her little brother, even when he was fussy and demanding. Daniel grew into a rambunctious toddler with Isaac's determination and Diana's laugh. On their third wedding anniversary, Isaac took Diana back to the Italian restaurant where he'd proposed. They'd left the kids with Barbara Patterson, who'd become an honorary grandmother to both children. 3 years, Diana said, raising her wine glass. "Sometimes it feels like 3 minutes, sometimes like 30 years. Best 3 years of my life," Isaac said, clinking his glass against hers. "Well, best 5 years if we count the dating. We're not counting the 2 weeks before you proposed the first time. That was insanity. That was knowing what I wanted and going after it." He reached across the table and took her hand, rubbing his thumb over her wedding band. "I'd do it the same way again. Maybe propose after 1 week instead of 2. Diana laughed, the sound filling him with warmth. "I think Emma is hoping for a sister now. She told me yesterday that brothers are fine but sisters are better." "Is that your way of telling me something?" Isaac asked hopefully. "Not yet, but maybe we're not being as careful as we could be." She grinned at his expression. "You like the idea?" "I love the idea. I love our family. I love building this life with you." He stood and moved to her side of the table, pulling her to her feet. "Dance with me." There was no music, but they swayed together anyway, right there in the restaurant, other diners smiling at them. Isaac held his wife and thought about the letter that had changed everything, about the daughter he'd almost never known, about the woman he'd never stopped loving. "What are you thinking?" Deanna asked softly. "That I'm grateful for all of it. Even the pain and the years apart, because it taught us what matters. Taught me that pride isn't worth anything compared to love." He pulled back to look at her. "I almost lost you, almost lost Emma. I'll never take a single day for granted." "Good," Deanna said firmly. "Because you're stuck with us now. For better or worse, remember. Best decision I ever made." They went home to their children and their farmhouse and their beautifully ordinary life. Emma had convinced Barbara to let her and Daniel stay up late, and they were building a blanket fort in the living room when their parents arrived. Isaac joined the construction effort immediately, his suit jacket discarded as he crawled around arranging pillows and sheets. Deanna watched from the doorway, her heart full to bursting. This man, this brilliant CEO who commanded respect from everyone in the pharmaceutical industry, was currently pretending to be a dragon for their daughter while their son giggled and threw stuffed animals. He'd given up the prestige and the power lunches and the penthouse for this. For them. "Mommy, come be the princess," Emma demanded. Deanna joined her family in the blanket fort, squeezing in beside Isaac. Daniel immediately climbed into her lap and Emma snuggled against Isaac's side. They read stories and played games until both kids were yawning, then carried them to bed together. In their own room later, Isaac pulled Deanna close, kissing her slowly and thoroughly. "Have I told you today that I love you? Only about 12 times. I'm not sure it's enough." "I love you," he murmured against her lips. "I love our life. I love our family. I love that you took a chance on me again." "I love you too," Deanna said. "Even when you're being ridiculous and proposing after 2 weeks. Best decision I ever made. You said that already. Because it's true. Every day it's true." They fell asleep tangled together, and Isaac's last thought before drifting off was that he'd found his way home. Not to a place, but to the people who made anywhere feel like where he was meant to be. A year later, Deanna did indeed get pregnant again, and Emma got her wished-for sister. They named her Sophie after Emma's best friend, though Emma immediately started calling her Princess Sophie. The farmhouse was chaos and noise and love, and Isaac wouldn't have changed a single thing. He still ran Emerson Pharmaceuticals, still made strategic decisions and guided the company's growth. But he did it from Millbrook, from his home office where Emma would sometimes do her homework at the spare desk, and Daniel would play with his trucks on the floor. He was present for every school play and soccer game, every bedtime story and family dinner. Deanna expanded Pierce Pharmacy into a regional chain, 5 stores across eastern Washington, all maintaining the personal touch that made the original special. She and Isaac became the kind of partners they'd always meant to be, supporting each other's ambitions while prioritizing their family above all else. On Emma's 7th birthday, Isaac stood in their backyard watching his daughter blow out candles, surrounded by friends and family. Daniel was running around with the other kids, and Deanna held baby Sophie, who was watching the festivities with wide eyes. "Make a wish, Emma," Deanna called. Emma closed her eyes tight, then blew out all 7 candles in one breath. When she opened her eyes, she looked directly at Isaac and grinned. Later, when the guests had left and they were cleaning up, Isaac asked, "What did you wish for?" "I can't tell you or it won't come true," Emma said seriously. "Fair enough." He hugged her tight. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." "Daddy," Emma's voice was muffled against his chest. "I didn't really wish for anything, because I already have everything I want." Isaac's throat tightened with emotion. He looked over at Deanna, who was watching them with tears in her eyes, Daniel on her hip and Sophie in her arms. His family. His whole world. "Me too, Emma," he said softly. "Me too." That night, after all 3 kids were finally asleep, Isaac and Deanna collapsed on the couch together, exhausted and happy. Deanna curled into his side and he wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Good birthday," she asked. "Perfect birthday, perfect life." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for sending that letter. Isaac, that was 4 years ago, I know, but I'll never stop being grateful that you did, that you gave me the chance to be part of this, part of our family." He tilted her face up to his. "I love you more every day. I didn't think that was possible, but it is. I love you too. Even when you're being sappy and sentimental." "Especially when I'm being sappy and sentimental," he corrected. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that came from years of partnership and understanding. Outside, snow began to fall, covering their farmhouse and the town beyond in white. Inside, their children slept peacefully, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and safe. Isaac thought about the man he'd been 4 years ago, angry and proud and alone in his Seattle penthouse. That man had thought success was measured in profit margins and market share, in the size of his office and the respect of his competitors. He'd been wrong. Success was measured in moments like this, in a daughter who'd wished for nothing because she had everything, in a son who laughed more than he cried and a baby daughter who smiled at the world with trust and joy, in a wife who challenged him and loved him and built a life with him that was worth more than any pharmaceutical empire. The letter that had arrived on his desk 4 years ago hadn't just told him about his daughter. It had given him back his life, shown him what truly mattered. And he'd been smart enough, finally, to recognize it and hold on tight. "What are you thinking?" Deanna asked, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. "That I'm the luckiest man alive, that I almost let pride and hurt cost me everything that matters." He captured her hand and brought it to his lips. "That I'm grateful every single day that you're more forgiving than I deserve. We both made mistakes. We both learned from them." She shifted to look up at him. "And we built something better than what we had before. Stronger because we know what it's like to lose it." "I'll never lose you again," Isaac promised. "Never lose any of you. This is my priority, my life. Everything else is just details." "Good answer," Deanna said and kissed him. Years continued to pass in a blur of happiness and ordinary magic. Emma grew into a teenager with Isaac's determination and Deanna's compassion, already talking about studying medicine. Daniel became a sports enthusiast, keeping Isaac busy with practices and games. Sophie was their artist, covering every surface with drawings and paintings. Emerson Pharmaceuticals launched several groundbreaking medications under Isaac's leadership, including an affordable insulin alternative that changed countless lives. He won awards and accolades, but the recognition he valued most was the respect of his small town, where he was known not as CEO Isaac Emerson, but as Emma and Daniel and Sophie's dad, Deanna's husband. Pierce Pharmacy became a model for community health care, with Deanna speaking at conferences about balancing profit with service. She and Isaac were interviewed together sometimes, held up as an example of having it all, of making unconventional choices work. What the interviews never captured was the ordinary beauty of their days, the family dinners where everyone talked over each other, the bedtime routines that Isaac never missed, the date nights where he and Diana reconnected, remembering why they'd fought so hard for this, the lazy Sunday mornings where they all piled into the master bed and read the newspaper comics together. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac planned an elaborate surprise. He'd been working on it for months, coordinating with the kids and half the town. When he led Diana to the town square that evening, ostensibly for a quiet dinner, she found instead a party. Everyone was there. Her parents, his mother, friends and neighbors, even former employees from both their businesses. A string quartet played their wedding song. Flowers decorated every surface, and in the center of it all was a renewed wedding ceremony. "Isaac, what is this?" Deanna asked, tears already streaming. "This is me keeping a promise. I said I'd spend the rest of my life proving that I'll never let pride or fear get between us again." I thought it was time for a reminder. He took her hands in his. 10 years, Deanna. 10 years of marriage, 14 years since we first met. And I love you more now than I did at any point before. Marry me again. Here in front of everyone we love, recommit to this life we've built. Their children stood beside them, Emma holding Sophie's hand while Daniel tried not to fidget in his suit. The minister from their first wedding stepped forward, and Isaac and Diana renewed their vows with their whole community as witnesses. "I, Isaac, take you, Deanna, to be my wife," he said, his voice steady and sure. "Again and always. I promise to choose you every day, to support your dreams, to be the partner and father our family deserves. I promise to never let a day go by without telling you I love you. I promise that wherever you are is home." Diana's voice shook as she said her own vows. "I, Deanna, take you, Isaac, to be my husband, again and always. I promise to trust you, to communicate even when it's hard, to build this life with you one day at a time. I promise to love you through all the chaos and joy, through every challenge and triumph. I promise that you and our children are my greatest adventure." They exchanged new rings, these ones inscribed with the date of their first wedding and this renewal. When they kissed, the whole town cheered, and their children squeezed in for a group hug that nearly knocked them all over. The party lasted late into the night, with dancing and stories and laughter. Isaac danced with each of his children, then pulled Diana onto the dance floor for a slow song as the evening wound down. "Surprise," he murmured against her ear. "Best surprise of my life," she answered, "though proposing after 2 weeks is still a close second." "I have good instincts about these things." "You do," Deanna agreed. "You always have, about the things that truly matter." They swayed together under the stars, surrounded by everyone they loved, and Isaac felt the same certainty he'd felt the day he'd opened that letter. This was right. This was home. This was everything he'd been meant to find. Emma, watching her parents from the sidelines, turned to Daniel and Sophie. "We have the best parents ever," she declared. Daniel nodded seriously. "Dad says love is a choice you make every day." "He's right," Sophie said, even though at 8 she didn't fully understand yet. But she would in time. They all would, growing up in a house where their parents chose each other and their family every single day, where love wasn't just a feeling but an action, a commitment renewed in 1,000 small moments. The party ended, and the Emerson family walked home together through the quiet streets of Millbrook. Isaac carried a sleeping Sophie while Deanna held Daniel's hand. Emma walked beside them, chattering about the party and how romantic everything had been. "When I get married," Emma announced, "I want it to be just like that, with everyone I love there." "You have plenty of time to figure that out," Isaac said, not ready to think about his daughter dating, let alone marrying. "I know, but when I do, I want what you and Mom have. The real kind of love that lasts." Isaac and Deanna exchanged glances over the children's heads. That was what they'd built, what they modeled every day. A love that wasn't perfect but was real, that had survived separation and misunderstanding and come out stronger. A love that had created this family, this life. At home, they tucked their children into bed one by one, a routine they'd performed thousands of times and would perform thousands more. When they finally reached their own room, Deanna kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the bed with a happy sigh. "That was perfect," she said. "You're perfect. This life is perfect." "Not perfect," Isaac corrected, lying down beside her and pulling her close, but perfect for us. Same thing. She kissed him softly. Thank you for tonight, for all of it. For being the man who came when he got the letter, who stayed, who chose us. Thank you for sending it, for giving me the chance. He stroked her hair, memorizing this moment like he'd memorized so many others. I can't imagine my life without you, without our kids. It was empty before, even if I didn't know it. It's not empty now, Deanna said unnecessarily. Their house was full of noise and love and chaos, exactly as it should be. No, Isaac agreed contentedly. It's not empty now. They fell asleep holding each other, their bedroom door open so they could hear if the kids needed them, their hearts full of gratitude for the journey that had brought them here. In the morning, there would be breakfast chaos and school runs and work calls. There would be ordinary moments and extraordinary ones, challenges and triumphs, all the pieces that made up a life. But tonight, there was just this. Isaac and Deanna, the CEO who'd found out he was a father and the woman he'd never stopped loving, building their happily ever after, one day at a time. And it was more than enough. It was everything.